Actor and comic K. Trevor Wilson is right here in Studio Q. So the whole K. Trevor Wilson.
Yeah.
Is there some guy named Trevor Wilson doing really bad stuff out there that you want to distinguish yourself from?
When I joined up with ACTRA, there was another Trevor Wilson. He beat me to the punch, so I couldn't use my real name. So my agent suggested we take my middle initial and throw it out front, and I became K. Trevor Wilson.
I love it how, it's always such a little offhand thing that someone gets their name from.
It was, I never even thought that I was going to have to change my name, but then there you go.
So does your mommy call you K. Trevor now or not really?
No. I can actually tell where people know me from by how they refer to me.
Oh, right.
The K. Trevor, that turned out to be, we didn't think about it. It was the 90s, but it turned out to be a great internet marketing tool because I'm the only K. Trevor Wilson on the internet.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's a bonus. You don't have to go K. Trevor 178. It's like, you're the one and only.
Never been any fight for my domain name. It's just me.
So for people who aren't familiar with Letterkenny, can you describe your character, Squirrely Dan?
Squirrely Dan's a storyteller. He's a small town guy, sort of the keeper of knowledge. I imagine Dan's well read, but he's never heard words spoken before. Like when I joined up with the cast, Jared and Nate, their characters are pretty well established from the web series, and I wanted to fit in with them, but do something that they weren't doing. And from playing small towns over the past 15 years, I've met hundreds of people who really well-meaning folks, but they don't have the strongest grasp on English, even though it's their first language. And a lot of plurals where they shouldn't be, a lot of malapropisms, a lot of misused phrases, half a metaphor, and that's what I brought to Squirrely Dan. His English isn't his best subject.
And he kind of looks like you, but how much a Squirrely Dan is K. Trevor?
We're similar in that we're both Canadian and have beards. Some of my real stories have made it into the show for Squirrely Dan to tell. If I'm being honest, in conversation with Jared a few times, I've told him some tales that he's later on called me up and said, "Hey, can I put that in the show?" So there are one or two similarities, but I'm Toronto born and raised. I'm a big city boy. I'm not from the country at all. English was my best subject.
Nice. And numerically speaking, most people do live in cities, in urban centers. But for some reason, all these shows that are set in small towns have this huge following. What do you think it is that has people so into that small town feel?
Canada's a lot of small towns. We do have, the big cities, but there are a ton of tiny towns. And I think people have either spent time in them or been from them, and so they can relate to the characters. And it also it's sort of a common ground. I find the big cities in Canada, we tend to feud and fuss a lot, over who's the best city. And so if you put a show in Toronto, people from Vancouver and Montreal may not necessarily tune in. But you put it in a small town and everyone can go, well, that's fine.
Yeah. They can get on board with that. And you're absolutely right. Where you were born and raised in the city, a lot of people like me raised in a tiny little town where, people say facade, they say facade instead of facade.
Yeah.
But how do you balance it that you're staying on the right side of, it's satire, that you're not actually really making fun of rural people?
It helps that Jared, who co-writes every episode, is born and raised in Listowel. He's a farm boy himself.
Right.
It comes from a place of honesty, and I think that's the real key. Is as long as we play it honestly. If we're not doing a parody, we're doing a tribute.
As a city boy yourself, what's the thing you like best about the setting of the show?
It's quite lovely shooting out in the country. We shoot on the oldest working farm in Hamner, Ontario.
That's up by Sudbury, right?
Yeah. Shoot the whole show up and around Sudbury. They've been really nice to us up there, although they got to get mufflers on their cars.
Okay, that brings me to a thought. Give me the best thing about shooting up there and the worst thing about shooting up there.
The best thing, besides the Northern Ontario tax credit, Definitely
Yes.
definitely the scenery. We got a lot of fun places we can shoot at, and it just looks great. Like the show visually, I think has a great look to it. We have a top notch crew, and our director of photography, Jim Westerbrook, I think does a fantastic job of capturing the landscape out there. But the hardest part has been, and it increased with season two with the notoriety of the show, is people driving by the set because we shoot on the roadside in front of the produce stand, and like literally, I think half the cars in Sudbury do not have mufflers. They are the loudest automobiles I've ever heard. They just want people to know that they're there, and it can slow down a workday. And now that people, were driving by on purpose to
Right.
sort of scope out the show, we had to employ the police force a couple times to block off the road so we could get some shots done.
That's making me homesick, I gotta say. Now, you've done TV before this, but you're really well known as well as a stand-up. How would you describe, for the listener who doesn't know your work, how would you describe your persona as a stand-up?
I'm very much a storyteller, which is one of the things that helped me get the job at Squirrely Dan. I'm a strange but true story guy. My persona when I first started, I was sort of everybody's drinking buddy. Everyone had a friend
Right?
that I reminded them of, and I played up to that. I always had a drink in my hand on stage. When you could still smoke indoors, I'd have a cigarette in the rocks glass, and it was more of a comfortable chat with your buddy as opposed to being at a show. It's changed a bit as I've matured and gotten older. I still usually have a drink with me, but a little bit more of a show. Yeah,
What, what
I'm
are
just
the
your buddy Trev, your
what are the
buddy
kind
K
of
Trev.
what are the kind of things that K Trev likes to make jokes about? What's ripe for you?
My family's pretty funny.
Nice.
They've been fodder for a lot of material over the years. My mom and dad are a funny group, and I got two sisters and a brother, and then my big, wide, extended family of lunatics.
Do they scream at you? We don't want to hear this in a
I've only
in a
had a
bit.
few people like in the family come up and tell me that they didn't want to end up in the show, which is too bad because they're so hilarious, but not on purpose.
Perfect for the jokes, though.
I can always tell which of the families is paying that close attention by how happy they are when they
Yeah.
see me.
And you always make jokes about your size. Why did you choose to do that, to make that such a big part of the act?
I don't even consider it that big of a part of the act. It is in there, but I mean, if I'm doing a 45-minute show, there may be 10 minutes on what I look like.
Right.
But I feel like you sort of have to put it in there because people can see it.
Yes.
And if you don't mention it, they're going to be wondering like, does he know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And also to a degree, I firmly believe if you're gonna take the piss out of anybody else, you have to take the piss out of yourself first. It's just the classy thing to do, and it's also sort of makes it more acceptable for you to rip on other things when you've gone like, look, I know I'm not perfect. Here's what's
Yeah.
wrong with me. Now,
We
here's what's
laughed at
wrong
me
with you.
already.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna laugh at you for a bit. What's it been like going from solo on stage to part of a TV ensemble? Because that's a different skill set.
Well, I started out as an actor. I got into stand-up after I was a kid actor.
Oh, I didn't know.
Started out when I was 13, 14. Went to Etobicoke School of the Arts, majored in drama. So my background was in theater and ensemble work. At one point, me and my buddy were the youngest people to ever take the Second City training course. We were 14 doing improv with everyone else was adults. They were either aspiring comedians or accountants looking to get more confident. So stand-up was actually the first big transition. Going back was kind of easy. Although I realized the last time I did a play, I realized I'm very much a stand-up now because I just didn't have the same. I found the actors so neurotic. Everyone was losing their mind and freaking out, and I was just drinking bourbon, wondering when the second act was going to start.
It's a big thing too about like when you're a comic, you're your own boss. You decide what the words are going to be. You decide what's funny and what's not. And most comics, put myself in that category, we're very judgmental on what other people find funny. How do you kind of strike that balance between, okay, I don't think this is funny, but I got to read these lines, and and the fact that you're a successful comic.
I've been very lucky. Well, I mean, that Letterkenny is really funny. Jacob and Jared are great writers, and so far every episode they brought us has been a lot of fun to do. There's other times when you're working on a project and you get something, you're like, oh, it's supposed to be funny. And the nice thing about having the background in comedy is I can sell a joke. I know a bit better than just a regular actor on how to push a punchline across,
Right.
and make it land.
Do they let you riff on Letterkenny? Like, do they let you improvise and
Oh yeah,
kind of go off a
yeah.
bit?
I mean, we'll usually do a couple takes straight from book, but then we're just allowed to mess around and have a bit of fun, make it our own. And sometimes we'll get the set, and Jared will have some inspiration, and we'll rework a scene right there before we film it. And they're very open. A couple times I've come in with a thought in my head or just a problem, like, hey, this doesn't make sense to me. Can we talk about this? And we had a very open dialogue, and we punch it out, and we get it to a place that everyone's happy. And I mean, so far so good. We've the critics have been kind to us, and the fans seem to like us.
Yeah, absolutely. When you go back to your younger years, and you were saying you were a child actor, but when you kind of hook up with those friends who know you as Trevor, not K Trevor, are they surprised at where you are, or are they like, oh, we knew this is where we were going?
I think the nice thing is everyone sort of seems to be like, yeah, this is finally what we thought was going to happen. I've been aiming for, I think I was 7 when I figured out acting was a job that you could have. I was
Right.
watching Uncle Buck and just sort of put together that, like, oh, John Candy this is what he does. Like, this is him going to the office. I'm like, that's got to be the best job ever. I think I want to do that. So, I mean, I've been at it for a while. So even my oldest friends know me as a guy who's going to get up and be silly and play pretend.
And John Candy, one of the things, one of the many things that made him so incredible is here you had a guy who was not Hollywood handsome. He was probably a good 100 pounds overweight, and yet he played the romantic lead in how many movies?
Yeah.
And that was like, just, it blew my mind watching it. Was he a role model for you? And
Probably my biggest role model.
Really?
Probably the reason I got into it. Loved John Candy and watched everything he did from way back to when he was on the Cucumber Show. With Moose
that's
and
going
Beaver.
back. What about him do you think allowed him to push beyond those boundaries, that he could get those romantic leads?
He had, an incredible amount of likability. I mean, he was very charming, and that just jumped off the screen at you. And gifted. It's really a testament to his talent that he was able to play those roles that would have generally been meant for a handsomer guy. And that's really what you look for, those roles. They don't have to be played by a big guy, but he just got them because he was that good.
Yeah, there was just such a lovability about him. Your story is an inspiration to other stand-up comics. Excuse me. What's the biggest piece of advice that you give to someone who wants to make it either in comedy or in TV comedy?
You got to do it because you love it. You have to do it because you can't get into the business to become famous. If you're just here to be, if all you want to do is be famous, take a shot at the president.
Yeah.
But you got to do, because it's going to be a struggle. You're not going to, it's not easy. I mean, I've been at this 21 years.
How do you find life on the road?
It's gotten better. I do enjoy the road. One of the nice things about being a touring comic is I get to see the country and I get paid to do it. There's a lot of places I probably never would have gone. And I'm very glad I got the opportunity to go there, and even more happy that it was paid for. It's but I mean, it's a tough grind when you start out. You're not making a lot of money, and a lot of the times you're paying your own way. I've slept in cars in Legion Hall parking lots. I've put in my time on the road. now that it's a higher quality hotel and usually a plane ticket, and that's a lot more fun. I've become well versed in Canada's airports.
It's hard on the social life. Is there a sweetie in your life? Does it take a toll?
Yeah, most relationships end. It's either a mix of the schedule or sometimes it's sometimes you just don't want people to be at your work. Like you ask someone to stay home because I got to go to work, and it's like, yeah, but you're just going to hang out in a bar with your friends all night, and it's like, yeah, I have an awesome job,
but it's still my job.
Yeah, no, it's been hard to maintain a relationship. I married my career, and unfortunately, a lot of people want you to put them first, and comedy's been there for me a lot longer.
I was going to say that career's been one heck of a lover. Thank you so much.